Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, When Infertility Overwhelms the Nervous System, Emotional Dysregulation Healing through EFT. I am Dr. Irena, a psychologist and also certified EFT therapist and prospective supervisor. And I am um, really glad you can be part of this, conversation. And this is part of the series that I'm putting together on various reproductive issues and EFT. And my goal is to really shift the paradigm from focusing only and working only with women to working with couples as a much better, much more effective way, not only for women but for couples. And so the plan for today is that I want to look at infertility as through the lens of chronic trauma and then emotional dysregulation that follows chronic trauma and what happens with self regulation, after chronic trauma, that it's insufficient, that we really need to look at, co-regulation and why and how emotionally focused therapy can be very effective model for helping couples deal with infertility. If you have put all of your questions in the chat, and then at the end we can hopefully I can address them. So, why infertility requires trauma-informed lens? If if you're part of infertility world, and if you have worked with um, different types of infertility, you probably heard that there's a lot of they're using stress and coping model. Infertility is incredibly stressful, comparable to diagnosis of terminal illness, comparable to losing a loved one. And then there's emphasis on different types of coping, and mostly these are like CBT techniques. And I do want to think in a different way and look at infertility through trauma-informed lens. And infertility really is cumulative trauma. And unlike miscarriage, stillbirth, or traumatic birth, infertility often has no clear beginning or end. So every cycle brings hope, anticipation, then disappointment, and creates patterns of repeated nervous system activation. So it's chronic and cyclic. Okay, we have. Uh, uh, and So, in addition to and the type of trauma, that infertility presents is actually chronic trauma. So it's cyclic, from month to month, and there's no repair. No repair from month to month unless there's a positive pregnancy test, and that's always not guaranteed. And this chronic trauma without repair can lead to something that's called allostatic load, or what it means is cumulative wear and tear on the body and brain that occurs when stress response is repeatedly activated without full recovery. So what we have is that couples go, and especially women, through month through a cycle of activation, hope, and then disappointment, and they don't have time to repair in between. And of course, that is going to lead to reduced ability to regulate emotions due to chronic activation and lack of time to recuperate. I also want to think of and look at infertility as an attachment system stressor. When you think about infertility, it threatens core attachment needs. Safety. Are we going to be okay? Predictability. What is our future going to be like? Am I going to be like? Who am I if I don't have, a child? Shared future, individual future. Will we have the life that we imagined or not? And infertility actually activates attachment, core attachment system, fears, such as uncertainty, loss, presents threat, and even secure couples are going to respond. So it doesn't discriminate. So I want to say that even for secure couples, they're going to be activated and by infertility. And, because infertility is ongoing, this emotional dysregulation that follows is going to be chronic, not episodic. So it's constant. And what the responses, common responses actually look like? We have hypervigilance around timing, symptoms, tests like what's next, like hypervigilance about, the bodily responses, emotional numbing to avoid repeated disappointment, irritability, anger, cycles of hope and despair. And when you look at them, they're actually very common trauma responses to prolonged uncertainty and loss. And how couples cope is going to depend very much on their gender and their role. So the partner that actually goes through physical, medical procedures, they're invasive, painful, that receive hormones. Most often that's women, but also men can go through very invasive medical procedures. Um, they will feel, carry this more like embodied trauma. And the other partner who is not going physically through medical procedures will probably go into very shut down problem solving mode, probably guilt, and helplessness that he can't do anything. And more this kind of like one of us has to be contained to be there and stable for both of us. So what we have is actually same pain, for partners, but they're just going to cope differently. And of course, that's going to lead to misunderstanding and conflict. So when you have two people who are emotionally dysregulated, it is very easy to misinterpret each other's, cues and nervous system. So silence can very easily be misinterpreted as you don't care. You're not talking, therefore you don't care. Urgency of doing something can be misinterpreted as pressure or criticism. You're too much, you're overreacting. It's not really that bad. Why aren't you more positive? Withdrawal, shutdown can be misinterpreted as lack of empathy. You're not there for me. And the reality is that, both partners are dysregulated. They're coping the best way they can. But in that process, it's very easy that they can actually move away from each other. And what is, what could infertility distress cycle look like? So, infertility causes distress from diagnosis, painful invasive procedures, failure of, treatments. That can lead to constant and chronic nervous system, dysregulation from like hyperarousal, such as anxiety, overwhelm, to shutdown and withdrawal, and kind of like numbing. And both partners are then trying to cope the best way they can with this, this emotional dysregulation. And most often we have pursue, kind of like urgency, like hyperactivating emotion, wanting to talk, wanting to read, and withdrawal such as silence, shutting down. And in that process they can actually misinterpret each other's intentions. So shutting down can be interpreted or misinterpreted as you don't care, and wanting to talk, wanting to do more, wanting to read, attend, support groups, can be misinterpreted as you're too much. And in this process of trying to cope and misunderstanding each other, they can either get into a conflict or, kind of like disconnect from each other. And of course, this can lead to intensify the experience of stress, because they're not together, even high, more nervous system dysregulation, more protective coping, and the cycle is kind of like becomes uh, uh, has a life of its own. So when we have, um, this situation of constant, repeated, trauma response, self-regulation is just not enough. And I don't think it's fair to expect couples to, I mean, partners to regulate and calm down on their own. And we know from research that trauma overwhelms internal regulatory system and narrows nervous system capacity to self-soothe. So as part of that, the result is actually emotional dysregulation and really difficulty calming down, difficulty dealing with very intense emotions. So not that, partners don't want to calm down. They just really can't because it becomes too much. And I would say that self-regulation, not only that insufficient, that when trauma is, ongoing, but cognitive tools, and most often we have CBT tools, um, have really very limited impact, especially at the time of acute distress. There's nothing wrong with breathing techniques, um, journaling, gratitude, mindfulness. That's all very important and relevant, but at a time of acute stress it's just not enough because nervous system prioritizes survival over reflection, and all of these techniques are kind of like come on top, and they require really reflection. And I would say that if we expect and ask individuals, partners separately to self-regulate, through relaxation or cognitive techniques, not only that they're going to fail, but they can actually, my experience is increase anxiety and increase agitation, lead to shame, and maybe shut down. That, like, why I know that it's very important that I'm calm down because, we're starting, for example, IVF, but I'm so anxious, stakes are really high. I don't know what to do. I'm doing everything I can and it's not working. Therefore, it must be something must be wrong with me when I can't really calm down. So, what's missing here? Co-regulation. And co-regulation refers to the way partners stabilize each other's nervous system through emotional responsiveness, presence, and attunement. So safety must be, safety is experience, We can't teach anyone to feel safe. Safety is experience in the relationship with the, supportive partner, and nervous system really calms down and relaxes and regulates in connection. So when one or both nervous systems are, when nervous system is overwhelmed, the relationship becomes the regulator. We can't really expect, self-regulation. And from neurobiological perspective, humans are wired to regulate the stress in connection, not in isolation. And there's famous, Cohn's experiment of women, holding, partner's hand, where receiving, electroshocks, that close relationship reduce perceived danger and emotional load, and literally calm down the nervous system. So healing really can happen in the relationship. And I do want to add one more thing here, and this is, kind of like to support my reasoning why emotionally focused therapy and in working with couples is better modality than working individually. At times, infertility can become an attachment injury. And let me define, what attachment injury is perceived abandonment during a moment of critical need by someone we rely on for safety. So not always. I mean, it doesn't mean that interactions, or during infertility will become attachment injury, but there's a high chance that small incidences can can be very hurtful and have very long impact because couples are already incredibly living the state of threat and fear and uncertainty. And, during these heightened moments of diagnosis, failed cycles, painful medical procedures, they're going to ask, like, are you there for me? Where are you? I need you. Can I find you? Will you be there for me? So if the partner responds with empathy, then, they'll actually, the relationship will become stronger. But if they are left, hanging without emotional responsiveness and with this will color the relationship long term. And the partner that felt abandoned will feel that, from now on, I really can't rely on you. I have to rely on myself when life gets hard. So let me give you an example that's, fairly, of the situation that can, be interpreted as fairly small, insignificant, yet it can have a huge impact. For example, a woman who is in her 40s, early 40s, and so her chances are already diminished, has gone through a whole bunch of retrievals, egg retrievals to harvest her eggs. And she's anxiously waiting for the clinic to call and to let her know if they have any viable embryos. So stakes are incredibly high. She's already incredibly afraid, uncertain. After months of going through painful and of course expensive procedures. She gets a call from the clinic that none of the embryos, that she doesn't have any embryos. And of course, she's devastated. The first thing she wants to do is she calls her partner, and yeah, she can't reach him. The more she's getting anxious, the more she's calling him. And of course, her panic is, increasing. And he finally responds and says, honey, I can't talk. I'm in a meeting with my boss. I'll see you tonight. We'll talk tonight. And he hangs up. So she's now left alone in the state of panic and feels completely abandoned. If they can talk and repair, if he can say, I am so sorry. I know the timing was awful. I know how painful this was for you. And I am so sorry. They can repair and move on. And as a matter of fact, their relationship can be, closer and stronger. But if her partner is dismissive, um, defensive, uh, undermines, kind of like minimizes, the importance of the fact that he couldn't talk, like, oh, but it was not a big deal. We can talk now. Or, but you knew I was in the meeting with my boss and this was important too. um, this can turn into an attachment injury, and she's going to end up feeling that I can, when I'm in when life gets hard, when I'm in, devastated, when I'm afraid, I can't count on you. I have to manage, situation all by myself. I can't do it, I can't rely on you. But let me give you an example. If she was trying to call him, on a regular day and she can't get in touch with him, no big deal. She might be, frustrated at in the evening, so it wouldn't be a big deal. But it's important that she's calling him at the moment when she's feeling really afraid and devastated. So why I think EFT is really a great model that fits infertility. Actually, unlike other models of couples therapy, it creates opportunity for co-regulation. We don't teach, communication skills. We don't, go into cognitive. We create opportunity for couples to, co-regulate. And what does co-regulation really look like in EFT? For those of you who are, EFT practitioners or, in training, these are ARE conversations. when I'm in pain, when I'm struggling, when I am scared, can I find you? Are you going to be accessible? Are you going to respond to my fear? And are you going to engage in comfort? Or are you going to see me and say, like, I'm with you, you know? And co-regulation, by creating opportunity for co-regulation for couples, they can actually process trauma together rather than separately. And that's the key, that they are not alone, that they can deal with this together. And the infertility doesn't go away. The pain, the uncertainty, the loss, it doesn't go away, but it becomes tolerable, tolerable shared experience that they can actually manage it, together. And, we also have research to support that EFT is also effective for infertility, that even, short, very brief, EFT can improve for couples who are going through infertility treatment, can improve relationship, marital satisfaction, and cohesion, can improve emotional expression and security in the relationship, improve sexual satisfaction and intimacy. And you know how much, that's one of the first things that's affected and falls, and improves overall quality of life. And that's the study by Najafi and colleagues. And another research, it has proven that EFT can very effectively reduce emotional distress, such as depression and anxiety and stress for couples who are going through infertility. And what's really amazing is that it's as effective as antidepressants. So here we go. Relationship really heal and calm down the nervous system. And what's also great is that it works across infertility types. So it works for both female and male type of infertility. So let me, wrap up by, using a case of Jessica and John, kind of like imaginary case. John was diagnosed with azoospermia, and they were their doctor recommended using a sperm donor, anonymous sperm donor, or non-identifying sperm donor is their best chance. And John completely was in shock. He was paralyzed, went into shame and shutdown response, kind of like didn't know what was happening, but really completely shut down and basically stopped talking. And Jessica, uh, because she was very, eager to get pregnant soon, she took doctor's advice, very literally. So she went into an action mode, starting going through various, cryobanks, started looking for donors, and started showing John, different donors that she found. And he couldn't participate. He couldn't, look at them. He wouldn't talk. And she was getting more agitated, frustrated, actually pushy. And the more she was doing that, the more he was shutting down and shutting her out, and the more they were, getting stuck in this pursue withdrawal cycle. And they came because they couldn't talk. They couldn't make a decision about their treatment and what is the best thing for them to do. And of course, they couldn't talk, and how can they make what's the best decision for them if they can't really talk? And what happened in therapy is, of course, allowing space for both of them to share their experience. And this was probably, a form of, attachment injury that John can, really understand, and of course, share his experience with Jessica, that he felt very alone and abandoned in the hardest moment of his life, that she couldn't pause and hear him, but she actually went into suggesting different donors. And Jessica was actually surprised, and she said, "I didn't know you didn't talk, and I just didn't know what was going on for you." And I get it. I get it how hard it is. So the infertility didn't go away. The pain of azoospermia didn't go away, but they can actually approach this together and decide. First thing, share pain and make decisions together. So, what are the kind of like key takeaways that really infertility presents chronic trauma without resolution? That it happens really in cycles, cyclical, goes from month to month. The trauma leads to emotional dysregulation, chronic emotional dysregulation. And at the time of this like chronic emotional dysregulation, self-regulation fails, and we need to actually look for co-regulation, help partners co-regulate. And EFT is a really effective model for dealing with, infertility, couples who are dealing with infertility, because not only that's proven by research, but it also provides opportunity for co-regulation. Okay, so let me see. Okay, let me see if you guys have any questions, but um, yeah. Um, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Um, as I said, I'll try to answer them. I'm not very good in like, I may have some better and more ideas afterwards. So, we can also connect afterwards if, you can email me and we can continue. And I'll put my contact information here, so you can hear it. But I'll see if you I'll wait for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So I don't see anything right now. Or we can even, if you want, you can unmute yourself and ask them directly. That's also fine because we have a couple of more minutes. So uh,
Hi, I'm Sybil. I just wanted to say hi and thank
hey,
you um,
sure. Hi.
to me.
Uh,
So I don't really
hi,
have questions.
Isabel.
I just wanted to take space and say thank you for this.
Of course. Thank you for joining. This is very nice. I thank you for joining. Yeah. Um, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And again, I'm not very good with like thinking on my feet, but we can always connect afterwards uh, if you want. Uh,
Thank you.
sure. Sure. Let me see if we can go back and do, uh, okay, share again. Okay. So guys, I think, yeah, I, yeah, let's do, I think why don't we, yeah, share my screen. Okay. Um, okay, share. Okay. I'm having a hard time like pulling my, uh, okay, okay, here it is. Anyway, feel free to reach out, and in a couple of weeks or hopefully sooner, I'll be sending the recording. But thank you all for joining and stay tuned because more things are coming your way. Bye.